Number 3. Nancy McEvers. Nancy McEvers' sisters called her the mediator, the one who kept them close. Nancy was the middle child of 3 daughters. The sisters dreamed of raising their children together. Nancy's mother, Laurel Mitchell, said people often use the words beautiful and sweet to describe her daughter. In 1983, 28-year-old Nancy was married to 30-year-old Randy McEvers, and they had a 1-year-old son. They lived in Washington County, Oregon. On the morning of January 2, 1983, Randy called 911 and told them that Nancy had shot herself. At 10:38 a.m., police responded to the couple's home. Nancy had a bullet wound in the head. Medical personnel took her to the hospital, where she was pronounced dead. Only the couple and their son were at home at the time of the shooting. The police found a Smith & Wesson revolver at the scene. They interviewed Randy that day, and he gave 2 accounts of what happened. He initially told the police that there was a struggle over the gun, and he was unsure who pulled the trigger. Then he told the police that Nancy pulled the trigger as he walked into the room. The police then got some interesting phone calls about Randy. Nancy's co-workers and Randy's friends called the police and told them that Randy had planned on killing Nancy because she wanted a divorce. By April 1st, months after the shooting, Randy had stopped speaking to investigators and did not show up for a polygraph test. The gun was tested and an autopsy was conducted. No gunpowder residue was found on Nancy's hands. There were also burn marks on her clothing, consistent with someone defending themselves. Also, the distance from the muzzle to the gunshot wound was too far. Investigators concluded that the gunshot was not self-inflicted. Despite this, Nancy's family was told that her death was strictly accidental and there was no evidence of foul play. Nancy's mother, Laurel Mitchell, didn't believe her daughter would have killed herself. She believed Randy killed her. Yet she did not say anything because Randy was still raising the couple's son, her grandson. What the family didn't know was that the police kept the case open, but they did suspend activity in late 1983. In August 2022, the Violent Crimes Unit reopened the case. The team of investigators were looking at cold cases in the area. When the team reviewed the case, they said it was poorly investigated. While the family was told there was no foul play, in the case file it stated that Nancy's shooting was not self-inflicted. However, no follow-up had been done in decades. In 2022, the investigative team interviewed over 20 people, including detectives, deputies, and firefighters who responded to the scene in 1983. Based on the evidence, investigators believe that the murder was a case of domestic violence. Randy killed Nancy because she was planning on leaving him. It's unclear why Randy McEvers wasn't charged in 1983. They could not ask the lead investigator because he had passed away. In January 2023, investigators interviewed Randy McEvers. During the interview, Randy told the investigators he had gone to hypnotherapy to forget that day. He admitted his wife never experienced suicidal thoughts or depression, nor did she have any problems with drugs and alcohol. The investigators referred the case to the grand jury to obtain an indictment. However, Randy would never face justice. He died by suicide on February 8, 2023. He denied killing Nancy in his suicide note. Randy's death brought some closure to Nancy's family, who were never the same after her death. Her older sister Janet called it the only admission of guilt they would ever get. She also said, saying her sister was murdered is really hard to say, but it's the truth, and we want people to know that. With the main suspect dead, the Washington County Sheriff's Office closed the case in February 2023. Randy McEvers was 70 years old when he died. Number 2. Frank Botts. In the spring of 1977, Frank Botts was a 61-year-old father of 2 daughters and a son. He was also a grandfather. During World War II, Bott served in the Marine Corps. He was stationed at Camp Pendleton in San Diego County, California. In 1948, after he left the Marines, he moved to San Diego, where he opened Bott's Gift Shop in the College Grove Shopping Center. On April 2, 1977, a customer entered the store, but no one appeared to be working. They searched for an employee, and in the back room of the store, they found the dead body of 61-year-old Frank Botts. He had been stabbed to death. It appeared that he had been killed in the commission of a robbery. All the money was missing from the register. Investigators found a set of fingerprints on the store's glass top. They also found a hat that was described as rare. There was insufficient evidence to find a suspect at the time, so the case went cold. It remained cold for 4 decades. In 2021, the San Diego District Attorney's Office reopened the case. Senior investigator Tony Johnson and his team reviewed the evidence from the case. In those 44 years since the murder, DNA profiling had become a major investigative tool. DNA had been found in the hat. Also, the scraping under Bott's fingernails had been saved, and they got a DNA sample from the scrapings. The DNA and the fingerprints were entered into databases. In 2023, the police were notified that a match to the DNA and the fingerprints had been found. They belonged to Norman Lamont Jones, who was 16 years old at the time of the murder. His criminal record started at age 14, and he spent most of his life in and out of prison as a serial robber. On November 15, 1991, police responded to a robbery at a Woolworth's department store in the Fashion Valley Shopping Center in San Diego. Jones went up to a cashier, lifted his shirt to reveal what looked like a weapon in his pants, and she handed him some money. He then ran through a crowded mall and got into his car. Officers surrounded the car, and a police helicopter flew overhead. The police thought that Jones had a gun as they ordered him out of his blue Cadillac. Jones told them he didn't have a gun. When he emerged from the vehicle, he pointed what the police thought was a handgun at them. The officers fired at Jones and killed the 31-year-old man. It turned out he was brandishing a toy gun. A police spokesperson said there were no violations of police procedure. The 5 officers were placed on administrative leave, customary for a police shooting. Despite dying 30 years before the investigation, Frank Bott's family found some closure that their father's murder was finally solved. His son, John Bott, said, "Fortunately, after 1991, nobody would ever lose his life because of him." The case finally being closed surprised his family. His son said, "None of us thought, after 46 years, that anything would ever come of it, so we're all a little surprised at that." The case of Frank Bott's death was officially closed in May 2023. Number 1. Laurel Mitchell. Laurel Jean Mitchell was born in 1958 and lived her entire life in North Webster, Indiana. North Webster is a small town that had about 450 citizens in 1975. In 1975, Laurel was 17 and a senior at Wawasee High School. She was active in the drama club. She had 2 brothers and a sister. Tragically, one of her brothers had died. Around 10 p.m. on August 6, 1975, Laurel Mitchell finished her job at the Epworth Forest Church Camp in North Webster. She worked at the camp's snack bar. She had plans to meet friends at an amusement park about half a mile from the church, but she never met up with her friends and didn't return home. Her parents called the police around 4 a.m. Police, family, and friends searched for Laurel extensively. Around 10:30 a.m. that morning, 2 fishermen found the dead body of 17-year-old Laurel floating face down in the Elkhart River about 17 miles from her work. The police initially thought that her death was caused by accidental drowning. Her body had no markings and her clothes were in good condition. Her class ring was still on her finger. Medical examiners conducted an autopsy later that day. The autopsy report said that Laurel's death had occurred rapidly, and her body showed signs that she had fought for her life. The cause of death was drowning. The police opened an investigation, but it wasn't long before the case went cold. The case remained unsolved for almost 48 years. Investigators kept a book with the name and address of every person they interviewed. The book contained over 1,000 names. The police interviewed a witness who lived near the church. They happened to be outside their home around the time of the kidnapping, and they heard what they thought was the slamming of a trunk door. He then saw two cars, a red or orange Oldsmobile Cutlass and a green Mustang, drive by. Another witness near the church saw the cars pull into her neighborhood and then heard several voices saying, "Let's get," or "Let's get her." The police's biggest leads came between 2013 and 2019. Several people went to the police and told them that two men, John Wayne Lehman and Fred Bandy, had confessed to the murder. Both men were about 20 years old at the time of the murder. One woman claimed that in 1975, when she was 16, she went on a date with Lehman and he admitted to the murder. The witness told the police what Lehman had told her, and they matched the anatomical findings of the autopsy report. In 2014, one man said that John Bandy was the killer. 5 years later, another man came forward telling police that Bandy admitted to the killing at a party. In 2018, the investigators submitted some of Laurel's clothing for DNA testing. In 2002, the police asked Bandy for a DNA sample, and he gave them one. It was a match to the DNA found on the clothing. According to the report, Bandy was 13 billion times more likely to be the contributor. Police records show that Bandy drove a 1971 Oldsmobile at the time of Laurel's murder. Bandy also had a history of sex crimes. In June 2001, he pleaded guilty to child solicitation and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Prison records show that he was released in February 2002. In 2016, he also pleaded guilty to child molestation. Prison records show that he was released in 2020. Although the police had connected Bandy, a sex offender, to the murder, investigators from multiple agencies kept working on the case because they believed that John Lehman was also involved in the murder. Lehman didn't have a criminal record. He was involved in a few small claims cases over the years. He was twice divorced, once in 1994 and again in 2021. On February 6, 2023, police arrested 67-year-old Fred Bandy and 67-year-old John Wayne Lehman without incident at their homes. In the affidavit, there is no mention that DNA evidence connects Lehman to the murder. The police believe that the men kidnapped Laurel at church, then they pulled her from the car and forcibly drowned her. The arrest brought bittersweet comfort to Laurel's family. Her sister, Sarah Kinsley, said she missed prom, she missed graduation, she missed getting married and having kids and all that stuff. Kinsley wished her parents were alive to see the men arrested. Bandy and Lehman were each charged with one count of murder and held without bond. Both were living on Social Security and given court-appointed public defenders. On February 8th, the men pleaded not guilty in their first court appearance. Both men could face life in prison. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Please don't forget to check out our new channel, Paranormally Listed. There's a link on the screen now, and there's a link in the description box below this video. Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.